Hey guys, so short video here for you. Let me move myself up here. Woo, there we go. Okay, so short video. I know that A-Day, I've never seen you all ever. It's been very frustrating with our calendar, but we do what we have to do. So I wanted to produce this short video for you to get a little bit of context of why European nations decided to start going exploring and give us the backstory and the historical setup to where when we build on that going forward, we know where all this came from. So let's go ahead and get into it. So one thing that we have hit already, and these are old notes that we talked about, is how we saw in Unit 3 right before break, how European monarchs started to come to power. So we talked about it in the context of the church, how the Catholic Church was struggling with the Reformation and how monarchs saw a power vacuum. To be fair, though, that process of the kings and queens of Europe and those states growing had already started well before the Catholic or the Protestant Reformation. And you had seen in 1492 the discovery of the New World and how exploration and getting into these trade routes were starting to benefit and make European monarchs much more wealthy. So from that wealth, they're able to grow in their military capacity and strength in order to continue to take power and influence away from the landowners. So again, the goal is centralize power, bring it to yourself so that the regional nobles and landowners don't have the ability to basically withstand your authority. And we saw some actions, again, that allowed them to do that, how the monarchs would grow the power of the military to have gunpowder. They had an efficient government working with them, government officers through the bourgeoisie or the middle class. Again, I've seen that trend already, particularly in China, how the bureaucracy and the civil service exam put your really good people in government. We also have seen divine right, God-given right to rule. But we want to focus specifically in this video on exploration and the motivations and the shift and change that allowed European monarchs to set this out. So we've got a map here that shows you our trade routes, which we have hit so often in our class. The three major ones being Trans-Saharan in Africa. We have the Silk Roads connecting the Middle East with China in the Far East. And then you have the Indian Ocean routes. And for the most part, Europe is significantly left out of the party. And if they are to be involved in these trade routes, then those merchants have to pay for the privilege to even be in the cities which they trade, whether that be here in Constantinople, here in North Africa, the Middle East, with Damascus and Alexandria and Baghdad. Even just to be there, they had to have permits to be able to have a presence. So these European monarchs, which are starting to grow in influence, are looking for ways to create wealth for their country that they can tax. And part of that is, how do I get my merchants in a more profitable position to where we can have direct links to the Far East and, to a lesser degree, the Middle East, which is where all these goods, spices, silks, things like that, this is where we're trying to get to. So that is the question, right? They're trying to get to. But it's not only that starts to make this change, because we have an event called the Black Plague or the Black Death. And what its impact on Europe is, first of all, is population. 2/3 of the continent survives, but 1/3 of Europe is gone. And that also is proportionally more at lower economic levels. So the poorer you are, the more likely you are to die, because the rich can afford privacy and they can afford personal space. And that was important to stop the spread of the disease. So 1/3 of Europe is gone, many of them at the bottom. Now we know that when many of those peasants die, the ones that are left and survive are in a great position. Oh, a bell. Okay, they're in great position because now they have the ability to earn higher wages. There's less of them, so they're going to command a higher wage because their labor is more in demand. So for some of those peasants, they make so much money working the land that it gives them the money to say, I can go off and maybe start a trade with this money left over. and invest in some sort of thing like that, or it gives them the money to be able to move to the cities and start life anew. So it puts these peasants at the bottom of society in an incredibly powerful position, to the point that many of them now become members of what we're called the middle class. So they'll be merchants and such because they get the money to be able to perform their labor that before the plague, there was just so many peasants out there they wouldn't be paid too much. And so you look at this growth of merchants and artisans, and they're looking for more trade. They're looking to get involved. And that's going to also stress out the nobility, because the more people leave for the nobles to make money off of their land, they're going to have to pay the peasants more and more monies to get them to stay, right? Otherwise, they're going to go to the cities and look for more opportunities. Now, the monarchs know this, and those kings who had for so long demanded the nobles' loyalty in exchange for giving them land now see an opening, because the nobles are struggling. They're paying so much to keep that labor with them. Now the monarchs are saying, now we have a chance maybe to seize more power from the nobility. What if I pay merchants to go out and try to find new ways to get to those trade locations? What if we try to invent something new to be able to go and capitalize on the money? Because again, then money comes back in, the king can tax that, and with that money, invest in the military, and again, to create more strength on his part. So one of the things that allows these kings to invest and to get more merchants to go exploring are the new technologies. And we see old technologies that have been the result of cross-cultural interactions with primarily the Muslim, Islamic world, whether they be lateen sails or the compass or astrolabe to determine location. Those allow these kings to send those out to get from point A to point B more effectively. But Europeans also innovate and create new means of moving goods, including the caravel, which you see at the bottom, was able to manipulate the wind direction and gave their ships the ability to sail in the wind more effectively. A flute, a Dutch invention, allowed for more space to help traders carry more goods to bring back and sell and make money. So all of this is about the monarchs being motivated to seize power. They get an assist from the Black Death, which makes peasants harder to pay, which hurts the nobility. They get a impetus from looking for new trade routes, so there's a kind of a way to make this happen. And the result is that European countries, through the efforts first of Portugal and Spain, are going to start finding new trade routes, and now that's going to change the ball game going forward. So you got a few questions to answer based on what you had here. A few notes that you've taken. Of course, you've done your naps, but this will get you caught up on what you're missing because we have one last day this week. Yeah, that's it. So Schoology questions, make sure to answer those, and we'll pick it up next week. See ya. Oh, no, I didn't stop it. Okay, how do I stop? Here it is.